Taewon wiped the sweat from his forehead and continued polishing the shoulder plate. The metal gleamed under the bright lights of Maintenance Bay 12. He had been working on this armor for 3 hours now, and every piece needed to be perfect. This was not just any armor. This was the ceremonial combat suit of Commander Vera, one of the most respected warriors in the entire Intergalactic Alliance military. The armor belonged to the Talrathi species, a race of warriors known throughout the galaxy for their fighting skills and their strict sense of honor. Their armor was not just protective equipment. It was a symbol of their entire life, their achievements, their family history. Every scratch told a story. Every dent was a badge of honor. And Daewon's job was to maintain these precious items without damaging their history, while making them shine like new. He was good at his job. Very good. Back on Earth, he had trained as a precision engineer before joining the Alliance workforce. His hands were steady. His eye for detail was sharp, and he understood metals and alloys better than most people understood their own language. That was why he had been assigned to work on elite warrior armor, instead of regular maintenance tasks. Daewon picked up the chest plate and examined it closely. There was a small imperfection near the center, probably from a plasma blast. He could not remove the mark completely without damaging the armor's integrity, but he could polish around it to make it stand out as the badge of courage it was meant to be. He selected a finer polishing cloth and began working with careful circular motions. The door to the maintenance bay hissed open. Daewon did not look up immediately. People came and went all the time, checking on their equipment or dropping off new assignments. He was focused on his work, making sure the pressure he applied was even across the entire surface. "You work with great care," a deep female voice said. Daewon nearly dropped the chest plate. He looked up quickly and found himself staring at Commander Vera herself. She was tall, almost 7 feet, with blue-gray skin and silver markings that ran along her arms and neck. Her eyes were golden, intense, and currently fixed directly on him. She wore her duty uniform, but even without armor, she looked powerful and dangerous. "Commander," Daewon stood quickly and bowed, almost knocking over his tool tray. "I did not expect you until 1800 hours. I am not finished yet. I need another 30 minutes to complete the work properly." Bara stepped closer, moving with the quiet grace of a trained fighter. She said nothing, just watched him with those golden eyes. Daewon felt nervous. He had worked on important equipment before, but the owners usually did not come to watch him work. They dropped off their items and picked them up when they were ready. "Please continue," Vera said, gesturing to the armor pieces spread across his workbench. "I wish to observe." Daewon swallowed hard and nodded. He sat back down and picked up the chest plate again, but his hands were not as steady now. Having the actual owner watching him work was intimidating, especially when that owner was a famous alien warrior who could probably break him in half without trying. He took a deep breath and forced himself to focus. The work was what mattered. He had a job to do, and he would do it well. Slowly, his nervousness faded as he lost himself in the familiar rhythm of polishing, checking, adjusting. The metal responded to his touch, gradually revealing its true beauty under layers of combat grime and oxidation. Vara moved around the workbench, examining the pieces he had already completed. She picked up a gauntlet and held it up to the light, turning it slowly. Daewon glanced at her nervously, trying to read her expression. Talrathi faces were hard for humans to read. Their features did not move the same way human faces did. "This is exceptional work," Vara said quietly. "You have honored every mark, every memory embedded in this metal. You understand what this armor means?" "I try to respect the history," Daewon replied, setting down the chest plate and picking up the final piece, an ornate helmet with intricate engravings. "Every piece of armor tells a story. I am just helping people see that story more clearly." He began working on the helmet, using his smallest tools to clean the engraved patterns without wearing them down. The designs were beautiful, flowing script in the Talrathi language that he could not read but could appreciate as art. He worked in silence, aware that Vara was still watching him, but no longer as nervous. The work steadied him. After 20 more minutes, he finished. Every piece of the armor set gleamed on his workbench, arranged in perfect order for assembly. Daewon stood and gestured to his work. "It is complete, Commander. I have maintained the integrity of all battle marks while restoring the ceremonial shine. The servo joints have been cleaned and lubricated, and I replaced 2 power cells that were showing signs of degradation. Everything is functioning at optimal levels. Vera stepped forward and began examining each piece carefully. She ran her fingers along the engravings, tested the joints, checked the weight distribution. Other Talarathi warriors had entered the maintenance bay while Daiwan was finishing his work, apparently waiting for their commander. They watched silently from near the door. Finally, Vera turned to face Daiwan directly. She placed one hand over her chest in what he recognized as a Talarathi gesture of respect. Then she spoke clearly, her voice carrying across the entire maintenance bay. "This one is now my husband." Daiwan blinked. He must have misheard. His translator implant sometimes glitched with certain alien languages. "I'm sorry, Commander. Could you repeat that?"
"I think, my translator, you are now my husband," Vara repeated, speaking slowly and clearly.
"The bonding ritual is complete." The other Talarathi warriors immediately bowed their heads. One of them, a male with red markings, stepped forward and placed his fist over his heart. "Congratulations, Commander. A worthy match." Daiwan felt like someone had hit him with a stun rod. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His brain was trying to process what he had just heard, but it was not making any sense. Husband bonding ritual? He had just polished some armor. What was happening? "Wait," he finally managed to say, his voice cracking slightly. "What? No, there must be some mistake. I was just doing my job. I am an armor technician. I polish armor. That is all I did. I just polished your armor." Vara tilted her head slightly, her golden eyes studying him with what might have been curiosity. "Yes, you cared for my armor with skill and respect. You touched it with gentle hands and honored its history. You accepted the responsibility I offered, and you fulfilled it beyond expectation. The bond is formed, but I did not know." Daiwan's voice was getting higher. He could feel panic rising in his chest. "Nobody told me that polishing armor was some kind of marriage proposal. I thought it was just a work assignment. My supervisor just told me to clean and polish ceremonial armor for an elite warrior. That was all." The other Talarathi warriors were looking at him now with expressions he could not read. Vara remained calm, her posture relaxed but confident. "You will come to understand," she said simply. "I will move my belongings to your quarters. We will discuss proper arrangements for our household." "My quarters?" Daiwan felt dizzy. This could not be real. This had to be some kind of joke or misunderstanding. "Commander, please, I think there has been a serious cultural confusion here. I am just a technician. A regular human technician. I cannot possibly be your husband. I do not even know what that means for your species." Vara picked up her armor pieces carefully, arranging them in a carrying container. "You are my husband because I have chosen you. The choice is made. Your confusion is understandable. You are not Talarathi, and you did not know our customs. But the bond is real and recognized. We will adapt together." She turned and walked toward the exit, the other warriors following her. At the doorway, she paused and looked back at Daiwan, who was still standing at his workbench in complete shock. "I will see you at our quarters at 1900 hours. We have much to discuss about our future together." Then she was gone, and Daiwan was alone in the maintenance bay with his polishing tools and his completely shattered understanding of his simple, quiet life as an armor technician. Daiwan ran through the corridors of Alliance Station Epsilon 7 like his life depended on it. Because in a way it might. He had to fix this situation before it got completely out of control. The Cultural Affairs Office was on level 15, and he was currently on level 3. He did not wait for the elevator. He took the stairs, climbing 2 steps at a time. His mind was racing faster than his legs. Married. The word kept repeating in his head. He was married to an alien warrior woman because he had polished her armor. It was insane. It had to be a mistake. Cultural Affairs would sort this out. They dealt with these kinds of misunderstandings all the time. Different species had different customs, and sometimes wires got crossed. This was just one of those situations. They would explain things to Commander Vara, she would understand, and everything would go back to normal. He burst through the Cultural Affairs Office doors, breathing hard. The receptionist, a calm Centaurian with blue skin, looked up from her datapad without much concern. She was probably used to panicked people rushing in here. "I need to speak to someone immediately," Daiwan gasped, leaning on her desk. "It is an emergency. A serious cultural emergency. Name and nature of emergency?" the receptionist asked, already typing on her pad. "Daiwan Park, human armor technician. And the emergency is that a Talrathi commander just declared me her husband because I polished her armor. and I need someone to explain to her that this is a huge mistake. The receptionist's fingers paused over her datapad. Her large eyes blinked slowly. Did you say Talrathi marriage declaration? Yes, Commander Vera. She said I am her husband now, but I was just doing my job. I did not agree to marry anyone. The receptionist stood up quickly. Wait here. I will get Heejin immediately. Do not leave. She disappeared through a door behind her desk, moving faster than Daewon had ever seen a Centaurian move. That was not a good sign. He paced back and forth in the waiting area, his heart pounding. Maybe this was more serious than he thought. But it was still fixable. It had to be fixable. A few minutes later, a young human woman emerged from the back office. She had short black hair and wore the standard cultural affairs uniform. Her expression was serious. Daewon Park? I am Heejin Lee, Cultural Liaison Specialist. Come with me, please. He followed her into a small private office. She closed the door and gestured for him to sit. Then she pulled up her data screen and began typing rapidly. Tell me exactly what happened, Hyejin said. Every detail from the beginning. Daewon explained the entire situation. The work assignment. The careful polishing. Commander Vara watching him work. The sudden declaration. The other warriors bowing and congratulating her. His confused protests. All of it. Heejin listened without interrupting, but her expression grew more and more concerned. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment, staring at her screen. Then she started pulling up files, reading quickly, her lips pressed into a thin line. Oh no, she finally said quietly. Oh no. What? Daewon leaned forward. What does that mean? Can you fix this? Heejin looked at him and there was genuine worry in her eyes. Daewon, I need you to stay calm while I explain something about Talrathi culture. Can you do that? I am calm, he said, his voice definitely not calm. Heejin took a deep breath. Talrathi warriors have a very specific bonding ritual. It is not like human marriage exactly, but it serves a similar purpose. When a Talrathi warrior seeks a life partner, they offer what is called the sacred trust. They allow the potential partner to handle their ceremonial armor. But I am an armor technician. People give me armor to handle all the time. That is literally my job. For regular maintenance, Talrathi warriors send their armor with servants or subordinates. They never personally bring their ceremonial armor to a technician and watch them work. Never. When they do that, when they personally place their armor in someone's hands and observe the care given to it, that is the sacred trust. It is their most intimate possession, representing their soul and honor. By accepting that trust and treating the armor with respect and skill, you accepted their proposal. Daewon felt cold, but I did not know. Nobody told me. I know, Heejin said gently. This is a terrible situation. Your work supervisor should have been informed that Commander Vera's armor required special protocols. There should have been documentation. Someone made a serious mistake in the assignment chain. She typed more notes. But here is the bigger problem. Now that the declaration has been made publicly, in front of other Talrathi witnesses, the bond is considered official. Breaking it would be what? Hyejin's fingers were shaking slightly as she pulled up another file. It would be considered the deepest possible insult to a Talrathi warrior's honor. The kind of insult that historically has led to blood feuds lasting generations, and not just personal blood feuds. When a bonding rejection happens, the dishonored warrior's entire clan becomes involved. Daewon stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You are telling me I cannot say no? That I am just stuck married to an alien warrior I do not even know because of a cultural misunderstanding? I am telling you that this situation is diplomatically very sensitive, Heejin said carefully. Commander Vara is not just any warrior. She is the daughter of Matriarch Kara, the leader of the largest Talrathi confederation. She commands respect across multiple systems. If she feels dishonored, if her mother believes the alliance allowed her daughter to be insulted, it could damage our treaty with the entire Talrathi people. Daewon sat back down, feeling numb. This cannot be happening. I need to contact my superiors, Heejin said, already typing. We need to figure out how to handle this carefully. In the meantime, I strongly suggest you do not do anything that could be interpreted as rejection. Be polite, be respectful. Just buy us time to find a diplomatic solution. She said she is moving into my quarters, Daewon said weakly. She's coming at 1900 hours, Heejin winced. Then you should probably go home and prepare. Talrathi take their household arrangements very seriously. If you are not there to receive her, that could also be seen as an insult. You want me to just accept this? To let her move in with me? I want you to avoid starting an interstellar incident while we figure out how to resolve this properly, Hyejin said firmly. I know this is unfair. I know you did nothing wrong. But right now, we need to be smart and careful. Can you do that? Daewon rubbed his face with both hands. His simple, quiet life was completely destroyed. Yesterday, his biggest concern was whether he had enough polishing compound. Now he was accidentally married to an alien warrior princess, and saying no might cause a war. Do I have a choice? He asked bitterly. Not a good one, Hyejin admitted. I am sorry. I will work on this as fast as I can. I will contact you as soon as I have any answers. Daewon left the Cultural Affairs office feeling worse than when he arrived. He walked slowly back to his quarters in Section 8C, his mind completely blank. What was he supposed to do? How was this his life now? When he reached his door, he paused. His quarters were small but comfortable. One main room that served as bedroom and living space, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom. It was enough for one person. It was definitely not enough for one person, plus a 7-foot-tall warrior woman with apparently all her belongings. He opened the door and stopped dead. Commander Vara was already inside. She must have moved incredibly fast. Large containers were stacked near the walls, and she was currently rearranging his furniture. His small couch had been pushed to the corner. His dining table was gone entirely, replaced by what looked like a weapons rack. You are early, Vara said, not looking up from her work. Good. You can help me organize the training equipment. We will need to establish a proper household routine. Commander, Daewon started, then stopped. What was he supposed to say? Be polite, be respectful. Do not start an incident. How did you get into my quarters? I submitted the household bonding documentation to station administration. We now share quarters assignment. Our access codes are linked. She gestured to a pile of strange equipment. I brought my meditation cushions, training weights, and ceremonial items. Where do you prefer I place the honor shrine? The what? Honor shrine. For ancestors and achievements. It is standard in Talrathi households. She was studying his wall space like she was planning a military operation. The eastern wall has good energy flow. I will place it there. Daewon watched in stunned silence as this powerful alien warrior efficiently converted his small, simple quarters into something that looked like a combination of a gym, an armory, and a museum. She moved his personal items carefully but without asking, making space for her belongings with the confidence of someone who had every right to be there. Do you have preferences for meal schedules? Vara asked, opening his kitchen cabinet and examining his food supplies. Talrathi eat twice daily, but I understand humans prefer 3 meals. I can adapt. I usually just eat whenever, Daewon said numbly. He felt like he was watching this happen to someone else. This could not really be his life. Vara turned to look at him fully. Her golden eyes studied his face. You are distressed. Yes, he said, because there was no point in lying. Yes, I'm very distressed. Commander, I think there has been a serious misunderstanding. You went to Cultural Affairs, Vara said calmly. It was not a question. The alarm went off at 500 hours, dragging Daewon from uneasy sleep. He groaned and reached to turn it off, then realized he had not set an alarm. The sound was coming from the other side of the room where Vara had set up her sleeping area. She was already awake, already dressed in training clothes and looking at him with expectant golden eyes. Good morning, husband, she said. We begin combat training in 15 minutes. Dress appropriately. Daewon pulled his blanket over his head. I have work at 800 hours. I need sleep. You have 2 hours before work. Sufficient time for morning training and meal preparation. All Talrathi households begin the day with physical conditioning. It builds discipline and strength. I am not Talrathi, came the muffled response from under the blanket. There was a pause. Then Daewon heard footsteps approaching. The blanket was gently pulled away. Vara was kneeling beside his sleeping mat, her expression serious but not angry. You are correct. You are human, but you are also now part of my household. I do not expect you to become Talrathi. I do expect you to become stronger, healthier, more capable of protecting yourself. The universe is dangerous. I would not see you harmed because I failed to prepare you. Daewon looked at her tired eyes. He had barely slept. sharing quarters with an alien stranger who snored like a malfunctioning engine. He was exhausted, confused, and frustrated, but something in Vera's tone made him pause. She was not commanding him like a superior officer. She sounded concerned. "Fine," he muttered, sitting up. "But I am not good at fighting." "I never have been. I work with tools, not weapons." "Then you will learn. Everyone starts somewhere." The training ground at Oro 530 hours was mostly empty, except for a few dedicated warriors doing their morning exercises. Vara led Daewon to a padded area and began showing him basic defensive stances. He tried to follow her movements, but his body did not bend the way hers did. He stumbled, he fell. He got tangled in his own feet trying to pivot like she demonstrated. After 30 minutes, he was sweating and breathing hard. Vara looked like she had barely warmed up. "You are very inflexible," she observed. "We will work on your mobility. But your balance is not terrible. You have steady hands and good body awareness from your precision work. This will help." "I feel like a baby learning to walk," Daewon gasped, bent over with his hands on his knees. "All warriors were once students. You are learning." "That is honorable." She handed him a water container. "We will practice 20 minutes each morning. Your body will adapt." The next few days fell into a strange routine. Morning training that left Daewon sore in muscles he did not know he had. Work at the maintenance bay where his colleagues gave him endless teasing about his marriage. Evening meals with Vara, where she explained Talarathi customs and he explained human traditions. Both of them navigating a relationship neither had chosen. Nights where he lay awake listening to her breathing, wondering how this was his life now. Word spread fast through the station. Daewon could not walk anywhere without people staring or whispering. Other humans thought it was hilarious. A few were jealous, claiming he was lucky to be married to such a powerful warrior. Most just found the whole situation bizarre and entertaining. But it was the non-humans who treated him differently that really showed him how significant this was. Talarathi warriors he passed in corridors would nod to him respectfully. Merchants in the station market offered him better prices. Even other species gave him more space and courtesy. Being Vara's husband apparently came with unexpected social benefits. On the fourth day, Daewon was having lunch in the station cafeteria with two human co-workers, Taemin and Jiwoo. They were both maintenance technicians like him, and they found his situation endlessly amusing. "So has she tried to make you fight anyone yet?" Taemin asked, grinning around a mouthful of noodles. "Every morning she makes me fight training dummies," Daewon said tiredly. "I am terrible at it. I heard Talarathi wives test their husbands in combat to prove their worth," Jiwoo added. "Maybe she is going to challenge you to a duel." "She would destroy me in 3 seconds," Daewon muttered. "I work with polishing cloths, not swords, pet," a harsh voice said behind him. Daewon turned. A large Krovar mercenary stood there, arms crossed. Krovars were a warrior species like Talarathi, but with none of the honor codes. They sold their fighting skills to whoever paid well. This one was covered in scars and wore mismatched armor pieces that looked looted from different sources. "Excuse me?" Daewon said. "I called you pet," the Krovar repeated loudly, attracting attention from other tables. "That is what you are, yes? The soft human who polishes armor while his warrior wife fights. The pet she keeps to make her look strong." Taemin and Jiwoo started to stand, but Daewon gestured for them to stay seated. He felt anger rising in his chest, but he pushed it down. Getting into a fight with a Krovar mercenary was stupid. He was not a fighter. "I am an armor technician," Daewon said calmly. "It is an honest profession. If you need maintenance work done on your equipment, I can recommend several qualified contractors." The Krovar laughed, a harsh barking sound. "You make jokes while I insult your honor? Your warrior wife chose poorly. You are weak. Useless. A pretty decoration for her quarters. That is enough." Vera's voice cut through the cafeteria noise like a blade. She appeared from the food line carrying a tray, her expression cold and dangerous. She set her tray down on Daewon's table with careful precision, then turned to face the Krovar. "You insult my household," Vara said quietly. "You call my husband a pet. Do you stand by these words?" The Krovar seemed less confident now, but he was surrounded by his own crew members. Backing down would make him look weak in front of them. "I speak truth. Your human is soft, weak, no warrior. Then you challenge him? You claim combat superiority?" Vara took a step closer to the Krovar, who was actually taller than her but suddenly seemed smaller. "I challenge no one," the Krovar said quickly. "I merely state facts." "Facts?" Vara's voice was ice. Let me state facts. My husband works with precision and skill that your entire crew could not match together. He creates beauty and function where others see only damaged metal. He maintains the weapons and armor that keep warriors alive in battle. His hands are steady, his mind is sharp, and his work is flawless. These are his weapons. These are his strengths. And you are too ignorant to recognize value when you see it. The Crovar opened his mouth, but Vara was not finished. You wish to prove you are stronger than a human technician? A being half your size who works with tools instead of weapons? How brave. How impressive. Her words dripped with contempt. If you actually seek to challenge someone, challenge me. I will gladly educate you on the meaning of strength. The cafeteria had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching now. The Crovar looked around at all the eyes on him, then back at Vera's cold expression. Challenging a Talarathi commander to an honor duel over an insult was serious business. It meant real combat, possibly to death with official witnesses. I meant no challenge to you, Commander, the Crovar muttered. I spoke carelessly. You spoke insults, Vera corrected. About my husband in public, before witnesses. By Talrathi law, I can demand satisfaction. However, I am feeling generous today. I will give you one opportunity to apologize to him properly. Or we can settle this in the traditional manner. The Crovar looked at Dewan, who was still sitting at his table, frozen in shock. The mercenary's jaw worked like he was chewing glass. Finally, he gave a stiff bow. I apologize for my words. I spoke without thinking. Apology acknowledged, Vera said, her tone still cold. You may leave now. And in the future, remember that strength comes in many forms. The warrior who does not understand this dies ignorant. The Crovar and his crew left quickly. Conversations in the cafeteria slowly resumed, though many people kept glancing at their table. Vara sat down and began eating her meal like nothing had happened. Dewan stared at her. Taemin and Jiwoo were also staring. Nobody spoke for a long moment. You did not have to do that, Daewon finally said quietly. Vara looked at him, her golden eyes softening slightly. Yes, I did. You are my husband. An insult to you is an insult to me, to my household, to my honor. No one speaks of you that way. No one. I'm not actually a warrior, though, Daewon said. He was not entirely wrong. I am not strong like you. I cannot fight like you. You think strength is only combat? Vera set down her eating utensils. You think the only value a person has is how well they can hurt others? My people are warriors, yes, but we would have no armor without craftspeople. No ships without engineers. No food without farmers. Your skills maintain the equipment that keeps warriors alive. That is not weakness. That is essential strength that takes a different form. She gestured around the cafeteria. Most beings here, including that ignorant Crovar, they see only the obvious. They think muscles and weapons equal worth. They are fools. I chose you because I saw what others missed. You have patience, precision, dedication, respect for your work. These are warrior qualities, even if your battlefield is a workbench. Daewon felt something shift in his chest. It was the first time since this whole mess started that someone had made him feel like possibly he was not just a victim of circumstance. That maybe there was. The alarm went off at 0500 hours again. But this time Daewon was already half awake. His body was starting to adjust to the routine. He still ached from training, but it was a different kind of ache now. Less like punishment, more like progress. He rolled out of his sleeping mat and started getting dressed without complaint. Vera noticed. She said nothing, but he saw the small nod of approval as they headed to the training grounds together. Training had become less terrible over the past 2 weeks. Daewon still could not fight worth anything, but he could hold a defensive stance for more than 30 seconds now. His balance had improved. His flexibility was getting better. Vara adjusted her teaching methods for human physiology, showing him techniques that worked with his smaller size and different muscle structure, rather than trying to make him fight like a Talrathi. After training, they had breakfast together in the quarters. Vara had learned to make human rice porridge, though she added strange Talrathi spices that made it taste both familiar and alien at the same time. Daewon had stopped complaining about his furniture being rearranged. He had even started to appreciate the weapons rack. It was actually kind of beautiful in a deadly sort of way. I have training exercises today, Vera said as they ate. Fleet combat drills in Simulation Bay. I will return late, possibly after 2100 hours. Okay, Daewon said. I have a lot of work today, too. Some captain brought in armor that looks like it survived a reactor explosion. It is going to take me hours. They fell into comfortable silence. It was strange, Day One thought, how quickly the impossible could become normal. 3 weeks ago, sharing breakfast with an alien warrior wife would have seemed like insanity. Now it was just another morning. "Hey," he said suddenly. "Thank you for the training. I know I am not good at it, but I appreciate that you are patient with me." Vera looked at him with those golden eyes, and something in her expression softened. "You are learning. That is all I ask. You do not give up even when it is difficult. That is warrior spirit, even if your weapon is a polishing cloth." Day One found himself smiling despite himself. "I will see you tonight then." "Yes. Tonight." Vara stood, gathering her training equipment. She paused at the door, looking back at him. "Be safe, Day One." It was the first time she had used his name instead of calling him husband. Something about that made him feel warm. The day passed in the familiar rhythm of maintenance work. Day One lost himself in the careful process of repair and restoration, his hands moving with practiced skill. By evening, he had made good progress on the damaged armor, but was not finished. He decided to work a few extra hours to complete the job properly. He was deep in concentration, working on a particularly stubborn servo joint, when he heard the door to the maintenance bay open. He looked up, expecting to see a colleague or a client. Instead, it was Vera. She was early. Very early. And something was wrong. She was limping slightly, favoring her right side. Her duty uniform had scorch marks on the shoulder and chest. Her face was set in that carefully neutral expression he was learning meant she was in pain, but refusing to show it. "Vara?" Day One set down his tools immediately and stood up. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "Training accident," she said, her voice tight. "Simulation bay had a power surge. Holographic plasma became real plasma briefly. Several warriors were injured." "I am fine." She was clearly not fine. Day One could see blistering on her neck and shoulder, where the uniform had not fully protected her. The blue-gray skin was darker there, almost black in some spots. "You need to go to the medical bay," he said, moving toward her. "No." Vara's voice was firm. "Talrathi, do not seek medical care for minor injuries. It shows weakness. I will heal naturally. That is not a minor injury. You have second-degree burns at minimum. You need treatment." "No," she repeated, walking past him toward the door. She stumbled slightly, and Day One caught her arm to steady her. She pulled away immediately, but not before he felt how warm her skin was. "Fever warm?" The burns were already getting infected. "Vera," Day One said, and something in his voice made her stop. "I understand you have traditions. I respect that. But you are hurt and you are my—" He paused, then said the word deliberately. "You are my wife. I am not going to watch you suffer because of pride. It is not pride. It is honor. You do not understand. You are right. I do not understand. I do not understand why letting wounds get infected is honorable. I do not understand why suffering alone is better than accepting help. I do not understand a lot of things about your culture, and I am trying, I really am. But this is stupid." Vera turned to face him fully, and her expression was dangerous. "You call Talrathi tradition stupid?" Day One took a breath, trying to calm down, but he was tired and worried, and suddenly very frustrated with warrior pride and honor codes and all the complicated rules that seemed designed to make life harder than it needed to be. "Yes," he said. "If your tradition says you should suffer needlessly when help is available, then yes, that part is stupid. Your people value strength? Fine. My people see strength in knowing when to accept help. We see strength in admitting we cannot do everything alone. We see strength in taking care of each other instead of pretending we are invincible." They stared at each other, and Day One realized he had probably just insulted her entire culture. He waited for her anger, her dismissal, maybe her decision to finally end this impossible marriage. Instead, Vara sat down slowly on one of the workbenches, like her legs had stopped supporting her. "Explain," she said quietly. "Explain what?" "Your human perspective. On strength and help. On suffering and honor. I wish to understand." Day One blinked, surprised. He sat down on his own work stool, trying to gather his thoughts. "Humans," he started slowly. "We are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest or the most durable. Compared to most alien species, we are actually pretty fragile. But we survived and spread across the galaxy because we help each other. We cooperate. We build communities where everyone's different skills matter. The fighter protects the doctor. The doctor heals the fighter. The engineer maintains the equipment they both need. Everyone has value and everyone needs help sometimes. He gestured to his workbench. I work with armor. I see damage every day. Dents, burns, tears, broken systems. Armor that tried to be invincible and failed because nothing is truly invincible. The armor that survives the longest is not the armor that never gets damaged. It is the armor that gets repaired when it needs it. Vera was listening intently, her golden eyes focused on his face. You are not armor, Dewan continued. You are a person. But the same principle applies. Being strong does not mean never needing help. It means being smart enough to get help when you need it, so you can keep being strong tomorrow. My grandmother survived the colony wars, you know how? Not by fighting alone, by letting her squad medic treat her wounds, by accepting help from her team, by understanding that survival is not about being invincible, it is about being smart enough to heal. He stood up and walked to his tool locker, pulling out his personal first aid kit. He always kept one in the bay for minor injuries while working. I am not a doctor, he said, bringing the kit over, but I know how to treat burns. Armor is not the only thing I know how to repair. Let me help you, please. Vera was quiet for a long time. Then slowly, carefully, she nodded. Dewan opened the kit and got to work. He was not a medical professional, but human emergency training covered basic wound care. He cleaned the burns gently, applied antiseptic gel, covered them with sterile bandages. Vara sat perfectly still through the process, though he could see the tension in her jaw. It had to hurt. Why do you do this? Vara asked quietly as he worked. Care for me. You did not choose this marriage. You owe me nothing. Dewan thought about that as he secured a bandage. Because you are a person who is hurt and I can help. That is reason enough. Also because despite everything, despite how crazy this situation is, you have treated me with respect. You defended me in the cafeteria. You train me every morning even though I am terrible at combat. You try to understand my perspective even when it conflicts with yours. You are not what I expected or chose, but you are not a bad person. So yes, I will help you when you are hurt. He finished with the bandages and stepped back. There. You should still go to Medical Bay for a professional scan, but this will keep the wounds clean until you do. Vara looked down at the bandages, then up at him. You said you cannot fight, that you are not a warrior. But you are wrong, Day One. You fight in a different way. You fight for what you believe is right, even when it is difficult. You stand firm in your values. You help others even when they do not ask for it. These are warrior qualities. She stood up slowly, testing her movement. The bandages had helped. The pain medication he had given her was starting to work. Thank you. I will consider your words about strength and help. Perhaps there is wisdom in the human perspective that my people have not embraced. Perhaps there is wisdom in both perspectives. Dewan said, honor and community, strength and cooperation. Maybe we do not have to choose one or the other. Vera smiled then, a real smile, not just a polite expression. It transformed her face, made her look younger, less intimidating. Maybe we do not come. Let us return to our quarters. I am tired and you have the emergency alert woke them both at 300 hours. Not the gentle morning alarm, but the harsh, urgent sound that meant something serious was happening. Dewan sat up quickly, his heart racing. Across the room, Vera was already on her feet, pulling on her duty uniform with practiced speed. What is it? Dewan asked, climbing out of his sleeping mat. Vera checked her communication device, her expression growing darker as she read. Attack on Talrathi colony worlds. The Reshitar Dominion has launched simultaneous strikes on 3 systems. Heavy casualties. All Talrathi military personnel are being recalled for deployment. The Reshtar? Dewan knew the name. Another warrior species. But unlike the Talrathi with their honor codes, the Reshitar were known for brutal efficiency and no interest in treaties or diplomacy. If they were attacking, it meant war. An old enemy, Vera said, strapping on her equipment belt. We have had border disputes for generations. They must have decided now is the time to press their advantage. She pulled up a holographic display, reading through deployment orders. I am assigned to Strike Force 12. We ship out in 4 hours. 4 hours. Dewan felt something cold settle in his stomach. They had just started to figure this out. This strange marriage neither of them had chosen. They had just begun to understand each other. And now she was leaving for a war. How long? He asked quietly, unknown. Weeks at minimum. Possibly months. This is a coordinated assault. The Reshitar would not commit these resources unless they planned for extended conflict. Vara continued preparing, her movements efficient but not rushed. She was a professional soldier. This was what she did. Vara, Daewon stood up, walking over to her. Be careful out there. She paused, looking at him with those golden eyes. Something passed between them. Something that had not been there a month ago. I will return, Daewon. That is a promise. 2 hours later, Daewon found himself summoned to Alliance Command Center along with Vara. He had never been in the command center before. It was a large room filled with holographic displays, tactical maps, and high-ranking officers from various species all talking urgently about fleet positions and supply lines. A stern-looking Centaurian admiral gestured them to a private office. Inside, Heejin from Cultural Affairs was also waiting, looking nervous. Commander Vara, the admiral began without preamble. Your deployment orders are clear. However, there is a complication regarding Talrathi cultural protocol that requires resolution before you can ship out. Vara stood at attention. Sir? The admiral looked at Daewon. Talrathi law requires a bonded warrior to receive formal consent from their spouse before deploying to active war zones. This is to ensure the family unit acknowledges and accepts the risk. We need that consent documented now. Of course, Daewon said immediately. I consent. Whatever paperwork you need, I will sign it. Wait. Vara held up her hand, looking at Daewon with surprise. You should not agree so quickly. This is a serious commitment. In Talrathi tradition, spousal consent for war deployment is not merely administrative. It is a binding declaration that you accept the possibility of my death and will honor my memory if I fall. It is not something to agree to lightly. The admiral looked impatient. Commander, we do not have time for extended cultural consultations. The strike force departs in less than 2 hours. We need this resolved now. No, Daewon said, and everyone looked at him in surprise. Give us a few minutes, Private. This is important. Hyejin quickly ushered the admiral out, giving Daewon an approving nod as she left. The door closed, leaving Daewon and Vara alone in the office. You do not need to make this dramatic, Vara said, though her voice was softer than her words. I understand this marriage was forced on you. You owe me nothing beyond basic courtesy. Sign the papers and let me go do my duty. Is this real to you? Daewon asked, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. This bond. This marriage, all of it. Is it just a cultural obligation, or does it actually mean something? Vara was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was careful, measured. You wish the truth? Yes, I need to know. Very well. The truth. Vara walked to the window, looking out at the station's docking bays where ships were being prepared for deployment. I watched you work for 3 weeks before I brought my armor to you personally. I studied you. The way you handled every piece of equipment with care, regardless of who owned it. The way you spoke respectfully to everyone, from admirals to janitors. The way you focused completely on your work, seeking perfection not for recognition but because it was the right way to do things. She turned to face him. Talrathi warriors choose mates who possess qualities we lack. I am good at destruction, at combat, at ending things. You are good at creation, at building, at making things better. I saw in you something my people often forget in our focus on strength and honor. I saw gentleness that is not weakness, patience that is not cowardice, care that is not softness. I saw a different kind of strength. So you chose me, Daewon said quietly, without asking if I wanted to be chosen. Yes, and that was wrong of me. I knew human customs were different, but I assumed my desire was enough. I assumed you would come to understand and accept in time. I did not consider that forcing you was itself dishonorable, regardless of my intentions. Vara's expression was sad. I am sorry, Daewon. Truly. You deserved better than to have your life disrupted by my selfishness. Daewon walked over to stand beside her at the window. They watched in silence as warriors boarded transport ships. Some would not come back. That was the reality of war. A month ago, Daewon said slowly, I would have done anything to undo this, to go back to my simple life where I just polished armor and went home to my quiet quarters alone. I was angry, confused, trapped. And now? Vara asked. Now? Daewon considered his words carefully. Now I am still confused. This is still not what I would have chosen. But somewhere in the morning training sessions and shared meals and late-night conversations about human and Talrathi philosophy, something changed. You became real to me, not just an alien warrior who disrupted my life, but a person, A person who defends me in cafeterias, who adjusts combat training for my human limitations, who listens when I talk about my grandmother and actually cares about the stories. He turned to look at her directly. So when you ask if this bond is real to me, I do not know. It is too new, too complicated. But what I do know is that you are real to me, and the thought of you going off to war and possibly not coming back makes me feel things I did not expect to feel. So yes, you have my consent, not because some law requires it, but because I want you to come back. Because I want more time to figure out what this is between us. Vara's golden eyes were bright with emotion. You are certain? I am certain, Day One said firmly. Go, fight, protect your people. That is who you are, and I would not try to change that. But I have one condition. Name it. I am coming with you. Vara's eyes widened. Absolutely not. You are not a soldier. I will not bring you into a war zone. You are not bringing me. I am choosing to come. Every military force needs support personnel, engineers, technicians, medical staff, people who keep the warriors' equipment functional. That is what I do. That is my skill. And you need someone to maintain your armor. He managed a small smile. Plus, you need someone to remind you to get your wounds treated instead of trying to heal through sheer stubbornness. Dewan, this is dangerous. You could be killed, so could you, but you are going anyway because it is the right thing to do. Well, maybe I am learning from you. Maybe I am figuring out what my version of bravery looks like. It is not charging into battle with weapons. It is making sure the people who do charge into battle have the best equipment possible. It is being there for the person who matters to me even when it is scary. The person who matters to you, Vera repeated softly. Yes, Day One said. I did not choose this at first, but I am choosing it now. I am choosing to come with you. I am choosing to be your husband, not because culture demands it, but because I want to be. Vara reached out and took both his hands in hers. Her grip was warm and strong. You are the bravest person I know, Daewon Park. Not because you can fight, but because you face fear with honesty and choose kindness even when it would be easier to choose anger. If you truly wish to come, I will not stop you, but I will protect you with my life. That is my promise, and I will keep you alive with properly maintained equipment and forcibly applied medical care. That is my promise. They stood there, hands clasped, looking at each other with understanding that went beyond cultural differences and forced circumstances. The alarm sounded again, the final call for deployment. Time was up, we should go, Vara said. We have a war to prepare for. Together, Day One added. Together, she agreed. They walked back into the command center where the Admiral, Haye Jin, and several other officers were waiting impatiently. Day One signed the consent forms without hesitation. Then he calmly informed the Admiral that he was requesting emergency deployment as a civilian technical specialist attached to Strike Force 12. The Admiral looked like he had just bitten something sour. That is highly irregular. Civilians do not typically deploy with frontline combat forces. Talrathi warriors require specialized armor maintenance. Day One's the warship Thunder of Kara was not designed for comfort. It was designed for war. Day One had been assigned a small cabin near the engineering section, away from the warrior quarters. The room was barely large enough for a sleeping mat and a small storage locker, but it had a workbench bolted to one wall, which was all he really needed. The first 3 days in space were spent preparing. Day One set up a mobile maintenance station in one of the cargo bays, organizing his tools and supplies. The Talrathi warriors watched him with curiosity and some skepticism. He was the first human many of them had seen up close, and definitely the first civilian technician to deploy with a frontline combat force. Vara was busy with command duties, planning strategy with the other strike force leaders. She checked on him when she could. Brief visits where she made sure he had everything he needed and warned him to stay in the safe zones once they reached the combat area. He appreciated her concern even if he found it slightly overwhelming. On the 4th day, they reached the combat zone. The colony world of Kaltora was under siege by Reshtar forces. The battle had been going on for days, and Talrathi defenders were struggling to hold key positions. Strike Force 12 was supposed to reinforce the defenders and push back the invasion. Day One watched the tactical displays with growing nervousness. The red markers showing enemy positions seemed to outnumber the blue friendly markers by a significant margin. This was going to be bad. The first wave of warriors deployed to the surface in drop pods. Vara went with them, giving Daewon one final look before boarding her pod. He wanted to say something meaningful, something that would matter if she did not come back, but the words stuck in his throat. She just nodded once, understanding, and then she was gone, the pod launching toward the planet below. Daewon waited in the cargo bay that served as his maintenance station, listening to combat reports on the communication channel. The fighting was intense. Plasma fire, explosive charges, enemy fortifications, casualties, so many casualties. He forced himself to focus on preparing his equipment, keeping his hands busy so he would not think too hard about Vara down there in the middle of it all. 3 hours into the battle, the first damaged warriors started returning to the ship for emergency repairs. They staggered into the cargo bay with armor blackened by plasma burns, servos sparking, power cells depleted. Daewon went to work immediately. He worked faster than he had ever worked before. Field repairs were different from maintenance bay work. There was no time for perfection, only function. Patch the breach, reroute the power, replace the damaged component, get the warrior back into the fight. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, muscle memory taking over when his mind threatened to freeze with stress. The warriors noticed. They started requesting him specifically, waiting in line for his repairs instead of going to the ship's regular technicians. Word spread that the human technician was fast, skilled, and understood Talrathi armor better than most of their own people. "You have the touch," one warrior told him as Daewon replaced her damaged shoulder servo. "Quick but careful. Like a surgeon." "Just doing my job," Daewon replied, testing the servo to make sure it moved smoothly. "More than job," the warrior insisted. "This is art, this is respect. We see it." By hour 6, Daewon had repaired armor for 32 warriors. His arms ached. His eyes burned from staring at tiny components under bright work lights. But he kept going because warriors kept coming, and every warrior he sent back meant one more person fighting to protect this world. Then the communication channel exploded with urgent chatter. Heavy Reshtar reinforcements had arrived. The battle was turning. Talrathi forces were being pushed back toward a critical defensive position. If that position fell, the entire colony would be lost. Vara's voice cut through the chaos, calm and commanding. "All units converge on position Gamma 7. We hold this line or we lose the city. Preserves deploy now." Daewon listened with growing dread as the reports came in. The Reshtar were using heavy assault mechs, the kind of weapons that turned armored warriors into broken bodies. Talrathi fighters were holding but barely. They needed an advantage, something to tip the scales. An idea struck him. Dangerous, probably stupid, but maybe necessary. He pulled up the tactical data on his work terminal, studying the enemy positions and weapon signatures. The Reshitar assault mechs all used the same shield generator model. He had seen those shields before, repaired equipment damaged by them. He knew their frequency patterns. And he knew their weakness. Every shield generator had a harmonic frequency where the field became unstable. Hit that frequency with sustained fire, and the shield would collapse. The problem was finding that exact frequency during combat, which took time most warriors did not have. But Daewon was not fighting. He had time, and he had detailed technical databases. He worked frantically, analyzing the shield signatures from combat recordings, comparing them to technical specs in the Alliance database, running calculations. The harmonic frequency would vary slightly based on power output and environmental conditions, but there was a narrow band where it would always be vulnerable. He found it. He ran the calculations 3 times to be sure. Then he opened a direct communication channel to Vara's unit. "Commander Vara, this is Daewon. I have tactical information." There was a pause filled with the sounds of weapons fire and explosions. Then Vara's voice, strained but focused.
"Daewon,
"You should not be on the combat channel." "I know. But listen, the Reshtar shield generators have a vulnerability. They collapse at a specific frequency range. If you adjust your plasma rifles to cycle between 4.7 and 4.9 terahertz, sustained fire will bring down their shields in approximately 8 seconds instead of the normal 30. Another pause. "You are certain?" "I am certain. I have run the numbers." "It will work. All warriors," Vara's command voice rang out. "Adjust weapon frequencies per civilian specialist's specifications. Focus fire on shield generators. Execute now." Daewon held his breath, watching the tactical display. For a moment, nothing changed. Then the first enemy mech shield flickered and died. then another, then 3 more. The Talrathi warriors pressed their advantage, their weapons suddenly far more effective against the heavily armored targets. The tide of battle shifted. Not dramatically, but enough. The defensive line held. The city was saved. 2 hours later, the immediate crisis was over. The Reshtar forces had pulled back to regroup. Vara's strike force established a secured perimeter. Wounded warriors were evacuated to the medical bay. And Daewon finally allowed himself to sit down, exhausted beyond anything he had ever felt. The cargo bay door opened. Vara walked in and Daewon's heart nearly stopped. Her armor was destroyed. Massive cracks spiderwebbed across the chest plate. One arm servo was completely gone, the limb hanging useless. Scorch marks covered her from head to foot, but she was alive. Vara. Daewon stood up quickly, rushing over to her. You are hurt. Medical bay now. In a moment, she said, her voice hoarse. First, I need you to look at my armor. The damage is catastrophic. I need to know if it can be repaired or if I require a full replacement. We have another operation in 12 hours. 12 hours? You need rest. You need medical attention. I will rest after you assess the damage. Please, Daewon. He wanted to argue, but he could see the determination in her eyes. He helped her remove the ruined armor piece by piece, documenting the damage. It was bad. Really bad. The chest plate was nearly shattered. Multiple servo systems were fused. The power core casing had a crack that should have killed her. This is beyond field repair, Daewon said finally. You need replacement armor. We do not have replacement armor. All reserves are already deployed. I fight with this or I do not fight at all. Daewon looked at the destroyed armor, then at Vara, then back at the armor. He made a decision. I can rebuild it. Not like new, but functional. It will take me all night, and I will need parts from damaged armor in storage, but I can do it. You need rest too, Vara said softly. I will rest when you are safe, Daewon replied. Sit down. Let me treat those burns first. Then I will work on your armor. For once, Vara did not argue. She let him clean and bandage her wounds just like that night in the maintenance bay that felt like a lifetime ago. As he worked, she told him about the battle. About the moment his information came through and the shield started dropping. About how his analysis had saved lives. You found their weakness, she said. Not through strength or weapons, but through knowledge and analysis. Very human. Is that a compliment? Daewon asked, applying antiseptic to a nasty burn on her shoulder. Yes. The highest. Humans win fights through creativity and adaptation. You proved that today. The other warriors are calling you Caldoran, shieldsmith, one who forges protection. I just did what I could to help. That is why they respect you. You do not seek glory. You seek only to help, to build, to protect. That is rare. Even among my people. Daewon finished treating her wounds and sent her to rest. Then he turned to the shattered armor and got to work. He cannibalized parts from 3 damaged suits in storage. He re-welded cracked plates. He rerouted power systems. He replaced every broken component and reinforced stress points that had failed. Hours passed in a blur of focused work. His hands moved automatically, guided by the war lasted 43 days. 43 days of constant battles, emergency repairs, and sleepless nights. But the Talrathi forces, reinforced by alliance support and tactical advantages provided by careful analysis, eventually pushed the Reshtar Dominion back. A ceasefire was negotiated. The colony worlds were secured. The dead were counted and honored. And finally, Strike Force 12 received orders to return home. Daewon stood in the cargo bay that had been his workshop and home for the past 6 weeks, packing up his tools. His hands were scarred from burns and cuts. His back ached from hunching over workbenches for hours. He had lost weight and sleep and any illusions about war being glorious, but he was alive. And so was Vara. She appeared in the doorway watching him pack. Her armor was still the mismatched patchwork he had rebuilt, and she had refused to replace it. She wore it like a badge of honor now, the visible repairs proof of survival and partnership. We will be home in 3 days, Vara said. The matriarch has requested our presence on the homeworld. Both of us, Daewon looked up from his tool case. Your mother wants to meet me. She wishes to formalize our bond in traditional ceremony, and to thank the human technician who kept her warriors alive. Your reputation precedes you, Caldoran. That name still felt strange to him. Shieldsmith. The warriors had started using it after the first major battle, and it had stuck. He was no longer just Daewon the technician. He was Caldoran, the human who proved that strength came in many forms. "I am nervous about meeting your mother," Day-Wan admitted. "What if she does not approve of me? I'm not exactly traditional Talrathi husband material." Vara smiled, that genuine expression that transformed her face. "She has heard the stories. How you analyzed enemy weaknesses. How you repaired armor under fire. How you ventured into a combat zone to save me when my systems failed during the final assault. She approves. Trust me." Day-Wan remembered that terrifying day when Vara's rebuilt armor had finally given out during a critical push. She had been pinned down, damaged and vulnerable, with enemy forces closing in. He had made a split-second decision that probably qualified as the stupidest thing he had ever done. He had grabbed a spare armor suit, strapped it on despite minimal training, and ran into active combat to reach her. He still had nightmares about the explosions, the plasma fire, the certainty that he was about to die. But he had reached her. He had jury-rigged a field repair that held just long enough for reinforcements to arrive. They had survived together, and that moment had changed something fundamental between them. "I was terrified that entire time," he confessed. "I have never been so scared in my life." "I know. But you came anyway." "That is courage. Not the absence of fear, but action despite fear. Very human. Very you." Vara moved closer, helping him secure his tool cases. "The matriarch understands human nature better than most Talrathi. She has studied your species. She will see your value just as I do." 3 days later, they arrived at Talrath Prime, the homeworld. Day-Wan had seen pictures, but nothing prepared him for the actual sight of the planet from orbit. Massive cities built into mountain ranges. Orbital defense platforms that spoke of a culture always prepared for war. Training grounds visible from space where warriors honed their skills. The shuttle took them to the capital city of Karthos, built into red stone cliffs overlooking a vast ocean. The architecture was impressive and intimidating. Everything was large, angular, designed to showcase strength and permanence. Day-Wan felt very small and very human walking through streets filled with towering Talrathi citizens. But something unexpected happened as they made their way to the matriarch's hall. Warriors recognized them. They bowed respectfully not just to Vara but to Day-Wan as well. Word of the war had spread. The stories had grown with each retelling. The human technician who went to war. The shieldsmith who saved lives through skill and knowledge rather than weapons. "They honor you," Vara said quietly as another group of warriors made the traditional respect gesture toward them. "Not because you are my husband, but because you earned it. That means more than you know." The matriarch's hall was enormous, with high ceilings and walls covered in carved histories of Talrathi achievements. At the far end on a raised platform sat matriarch Kara. She was tall even by Talrathi standards, with silver hair and scars that spoke of a lifetime of battles. Her golden eyes were sharp and intelligent, missing nothing as Day-Wan and Vara approached. They stopped at the appropriate distance and bowed in the Talrathi manner. Day-Wan had practiced this specific gesture dozens of times on the journey here, terrified he would mess it up and cause some diplomatic incident. "Commander Vara." The matriarch's voice was deep and powerful. "You return victorious. Your service honors our people." "I serve the Confederation, matriarch," Vara replied formally. "And you bring your husband, the human who has caused such interesting discussions among our people." Matriarch Kara's gaze fixed on Day-Wan. "Approach, Kaldoran. Let me see the one who my daughter chose." Day-Wan stepped forward, trying to keep his nervousness from showing. The matriarch studied him in silence for what felt like an eternity. Then she spoke again. "You are small, fragile, you carry no weapons, you have no warrior's build. Tell me, human, why did you accompany my daughter into war? You are not a soldier. You had no obligation to risk your life. Why did you go?" Day-Wan took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "Because marriage, whether by choice or accident, means you do not leave your partner behind. That is human nature. We are stubborn that way. We care for people even when it is difficult, even when it is dangerous. Even when logic says we should stay safe. We care anyway. That is what makes us human." The matriarch was quiet for a moment, then made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Stubborn, yes, I have heard this about humans. You are a species that refuses to know when you are beaten. You face impossible odds and decide to try anyway. You survive through determination and creativity rather than strength." She stood, descending from her platform to stand directly in front of Day-Wan. She was nearly twice his height. "This is admirable. This is warrior spirit in a different form. She turned to address the assembled Talrathi officials and warriors who had gathered to witness the ceremony. My people pride themselves on strength, on combat prowess, on honor earned through battle. But we sometimes forget that strength has many faces. This human Caldoran has shown us a truth we needed to remember. The matriarch gestured to Daewon. He builds where others destroy. He heals where others wound. He stands firm when others flee. He went to war not with weapons but with knowledge, and his contribution saved lives. Talrathi lives. Warrior lives. He proved that creating and protecting has value equal to fighting and destroying. This is wisdom. She placed a hand on Daewon's shoulder, a gesture of respect and acceptance. Your species builds where others see only emptiness. You heal where others see only wounds. You stand together when others stand alone. You are worthy of our warriors. You are worthy of the Alliance. You are worthy of the name Caldoran, shieldsmith, one who forges protection. And you are worthy of my daughter. The assembled Talrathi made their approval known in the traditional way, striking their chests with closed fists in a rhythmic pattern. The sound filled the massive hall, echoing off the stone walls. Daewon felt overwhelmed by the acceptance, the recognition, the honor being shown to someone who had only tried to help in the way he knew how. The formal bonding ceremony followed, conducted in the traditional Talrathi manner, but adjusted to accommodate human customs as well. Vara explained each ritual as they performed it, making sure Daewon understood the significance. The exchange of personal tokens, the sharing of family histories, the public declaration of partnership and mutual support. But the moment that mattered most to Daewon came at the end. When Vara took his hands and spoke words that were not part of any ceremony, words that came from her alone. I chose you in error at first, not understanding that choice must go both ways, but you chose me back. You chose this bond. You chose to stand beside me when you could have walked away. That choice means everything. I will honor it for the rest of my life. You are my partner, my balance, my reminder that strength comes in many forms. I am grateful the universe brought us together, even in the most unlikely way. Daewon squeezed her hands, feeling emotion welling up in his chest. I was angry at first, confused, lost, but you showed me patience. You defended my worth when others doubted. You adapted to my perspective while teaching me yours. You made space for me to be myself while inviting me to understand your world. I am grateful too. For all of it. Even the parts that were difficult. They sealed the bond with a kiss. Human tradition meeting Talrathi ceremony. The assembled warriors approved with another round of rhythmic chest striking. And Daewon officially became part of Talrathi culture, while remaining fundamentally human. A bridge between worlds, a living example of how different peoples could find common ground. The celebration afterward was loud and overwhelming. Warriors wanted to hear stories from the war. They asked about human culture, human technology, human philosophy,